A lot of people disagreed with us, and maybe you guys still disagree with us, but we will absolutely tell her that she is half black and half white. We will also tell her what society will most likely see her as, black. And so with that, we want her to walk in life accordingly.
No, let's go there.
Like a really bad mom. Who, quote unquote, I'm tired of people in my race, so I need to find me somebody white. This is how I knew that Brian
Don't do it.
was going to be a great physical partner.
Don't tell them. Hey everyone, welcome to the Let's Get Deep podcast, where we have conversations about our lives that most people would never.
Would never.
And we're going to be honest. I don't know what I'm saying. We're going to be honest today. We threw this podcast in here at the last second.
The last second. But we needed to have it. We needed to have this conversation.
It's Mother's Day right now, and we're deciding to film. This is Lexi's day off, and she said, no. We need to talk about it.
We need to talk about this.
We're posting it tomorrow.
Before it gets a little over, past due, we want to talk about this.
And I find myself usually when we do these podcasts almost every week, I start looking at the camera like this, and then slowly but surely I start like leaning towards you.
I know,
over the
because
course
we're having a conversation.
I know, so I feel like I'm just going to assume the position. I feel like I shouldn't. I feel like I should just move now. Like, I'm ready. Okay, go. What was on your heart? This word inside your soul?
I'm done.
That we need to talk about.
You being a church boy is hilarious to me. Okay. So I'm pretty sure the world has gone crazy about this Kendrick and Drake conversation. Mm-hmm. Before you're like, okay, we've heard about the beef, I have a different perspective, and I want to hear your thoughts, but I also want to hear your thought too.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the rap beef for the whole hour, trust us.
But you guys know there was a lot of conversation about Drake and who he was as a person. Let me tell you, if you listen to these songs, if I was Drake, I would have went to therapy. I'm like, I don't know if I have this in me. I don't know. I need to go and check myself. Like, Kendrick went in, but Drake went in too. I'm not about to take away Drake. But a lot of the conversation that Kendrick was talking about was how Drake was not black. And how because
he's mixed, right?
Because he's mixed. And talking about how he's not really a part of the culture. He's not really for the black people. And I think there's a level of like reasons why he feels that way. But it was a lot of conversation about him being half black. Mm-hmm. And my issue with that is that there has been a huge conversation with colorism in the black community when it comes to the stereotype of dark skin versus light skin and what that means and what that looks like. And now we're having a conversation because our kids are mixed. Mm-hmm. Like they are going into this world. And I will tell you right now, if Aza was in high school listening and all this beef was going on, I don't know if I would take her to school.
It's a snow day today, Aza. We're going to keep you home.
Because I feel like there would be a lot of judgment. I mean, I could only imagine it. And I went to a Detroit school.
High schools are just no chill.
I'm telling you, there would have been a whole conversation about her being mixed. At least when I was growing up, it would have been. So
you said like this concept of colorism. I have a little bit of an ignorant question. Is it colorism when you're talking about mixed kids? Is that colorism, or is colorism strictly under the black community in shades of black people?
I believe that colorism does have to deal with mixed, because I feel like that there is a stereotype just because of the color of her skin. If she was darker and she was a part of the black culture, I feel like most people would not say anything.
Okay, interesting. I feel like it's almost a mixture of the two, though. It's mixing and merging the idea and concept of colorism with biracial kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like if they were biracial alone and all biracial kids were one skin tone, then it would be just that conversation. But because biracial kids take on different stronger traits of some black characteristics, or some take on more stronger traits of white characteristics, like that changes how they interact with society.
Yeah, and I feel...
or how society perceives them. Sorry.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think that the problem is when she gets older, there is this battle of choosing who she needs to be. Mm-hmm. And what I wouldn't want is, if doesn't mean I am forcing her, doesn't mean what, I'm not saying that she should, but if she decides to lean over to Black culture and she's mixed, I wouldn't want Black culture to not accept her because she's mixed, you know?
So why do you, not to like delve too deep into the Kendrick Drake concept, but why do you think Kendrick has an issue with Drake being mixed? Is that, I don't know if that's directly his issue. It seemed like his issue was more so that Drake is leveraging the Black community when he wants to,
Yes.
but not being fully immersed in it.
Yes.
Right.
And
Because
also,
you mentioned like why you'd want to keep Asa home and the backlash and all of these things. I'm trying to understand the root of what the real issue here is that people would have.
I think a lot of people would and could come for people that are mixed and say that they're not Black. Like, you're not really Black. You don't understand what it is to be in the Black culture.
Do you think that mixed kids do understand what it means to be in Black culture?
I honestly, and that's the conversation that we've actually had, which ended up being a huge controversial topic on YouTube. And the truth be told is that when you are out in society, people will realize that Ace is Black. Mm-hmm. They will see that Ace is Black. And the truth be told is that they will handle her accordingly. So maybe not all Black culture, maybe not all Black, the things that maybe I have dealt with because I have been dark skinned, and there's a whole different conversation with that. But she will experience things that happen to Black people. Now, in our house, and this is the conversation that we had on YouTube.
It was actually our most controversial video that we have probably ever posted.
Yeah. And
Crazy
in our
enough.
house, what we will tell her is that she is mixed. She is half Black, half white. If you guys want to look at that video, you should look at the comments under that video. You can find it was a few years ago, a long time ago. But if you look at it, you will see a lot of people disagreed with us. And maybe you guys still disagree with us, but we will absolutely tell her that she is half Black and half white. We will also tell her what society will most likely see her as, Black. And so with that, we want her to walk in life accordingly.
I think that when people hear that we will raise our kids telling them that they are half white, half Black, I think what they hear is that we're teaching them to be naive, or ignorant of what society will perceive them as. And we are very strongly saying, no, that's not the case at all. Like, we're not going to make them go out into society blind to the fact that people are going to talk negatively about them because of their skin tone, or treat them negatively or differently because of that, or just be discriminatory in general. That pressure is going to naturally happen from society because of what they look like. However, just because of how someone else treats you doesn't mean that who you are changes, or how I'm going to teach you who you are changes. Mm-hmm. Your identity is your identity regardless of what label someone else wants to put on you. Yeah. So there's this balance of teaching them who they truly are and what society is going to tell you that you are, and how to combat that.
It's important for us to share our history with Asa. And I guess what I get nervous about, and I'm gonna be honest, I get nervous about sharing our history because our history collides in such negative way. And I'm curious to know, like, if she were to ask you, and this is a real question, if she were to ask you, what was good about your culture, what would you say?
So this was a really intriguing conversation that you and I had about how you were really proud of your history. You were proud of your culture. You were proud of your lineage and ancestry, all the things that, your ancestors have gone through and come from and overcome. And you asked me, like, are you proud of your culture? Are you proud of your history? And I had to think, and I was like, am I? Because there's a lot of negative stuff that comes with us.
A lot of negative stuff.
And I think for like my knee-jerk reaction was like, no, I don't think I'm very proud of a lot of things that have happened in my culture. And I think that was like my first initial response, because I'm thinking not even just with slavery, but just like back to my European descent. Like, how we have used and abused colonizing and like all of these different things from the Crusades. Like, and I was really going back and I'm like, man, there's been so much evil done.
Sheesh.
But I also think that there's a lot of positives, and I can't completely disregard those positives. There's a lot of people in my culture who have stood up for those rights, who have joined in those fights, who have, you know, been a part of the Underground Railroad or been a part of movements that have fought against systems that were in place to hurt people. And I can't disregard those stories, and I can't disregard that part of my history just because sometimes it feels like there's an overwhelming presence of negative.
Yeah.
I'll be honest though, this is a conversation that I, in my head, still have not fully grappled and resolved. I don't want to disregard good things, but it's a tough conversation.
It can be hard. It can be hard. I
'Cause
think that
I feel like my culture is responsible for a lot of things.
yeah.
And I think it's even more difficult that to a very high extent, I don't think my culture is taking responsibility for those things.
Yeah.
That's what's difficult about it. In fact, I'm actually like exploring my mind right now is the fact that there has been really no real responsibility taking place
Or accountability.
and a shifting of the things that were put in place.
Yeah.
That's what makes it hard to be like, okay, I can see the good. Like,
Yeah.
and let's be very clear. This is not like, I don't like my people. I don't like white people. Like this is not what that is.
Yeah.
This is just when you look at from a very high level, big picture perspective, and you look at what's happened throughout history, it's tough.
Yeah. And I think that it's going to be a hard conversation to have with our kids. But the goal isn't to shame one side, because I feel like that's what a lot of people expect us to do. I think is to present both sides. And I would love to share how different cultures, all cultures, have helped each other in some form or fashion when a system was trying to tear a whole culture down.
Yeah.
I think I would love to share that and talk about, yes, this happened, but I want to share a story about how, you know, I think I forget the name of this woman who was a part of the part of Freedom Riders, and she was white, and she, you know, stood up and stuff like that. Like, I would love to share these stories, and not just from a white, Black perspective, but from all different cultures, Asian culture, Indian culture. Like, I would love to share all of that and present those to her so she understands that, yes, there is evil, but there is good in each culture. There's good people in each culture, and these are the people that we see.
And I think we also have to leverage our own story as an example
Yeah.
of not just worrying and thinking about the past, being aware of the past, being respectful of the past, and being very conscious of what's happened and how it affects today as a whole, but also looking at you and I, how we came together, how we reconciled differences, how we function as one being from separate cultures, and looking at that as this is what we're striving for.
And yes, that is what I really want her to see, is that, yes, there was evil. Yes, our cultures didn't really, was colliding in a negative way, I guess, or whatever. But what I would want her to see is forgiveness, love, compassion, what you have done to understand, what I have done, and the things that we've had to talk about and understand. Because I think a lot of times, which is what we talked about in our past podcast, is a lot of people aren't having these conversations. So if they're not having these conversations, then how are they presenting them with their kids? I want her to know that we are having these conversations, and we're going to pass these conversations down to our kids.
You know what makes me really nervous? I am going back to that conversation that we had, and how I don't want to say most because I don't know data on it, but a lot of interethnic couples we know that don't talk about these conversations. And you just mentioned not having the conversation with your kids. What makes me nervous about that is, are we really resolving this issue if we're just not talking about it? The more and more people are coming together and mixing in relationship and marriage and creating children off that, like, that's all well and good. Definitely a step forward in coming together and unifying. However, if you're not talking about these things and getting to the root of them, if you don't ever bring the issue up to the surface, you can't ever resolve the issue. And so now we're just passing surface level mentalities down to the next generation, But the subconscious bias and the underlying deeper challenges that make up the systems that are in place will never get
And
challenged.
you're leaving the kids to figure out how to handle these different race conversations, these different cultures. And now they're figuring out who they are because you never really taught them.
Ooh, I need a minute.
You never taught them.
You
And now and this is why I've seen in the conversation, and please, women or men that are mixed, come into this conversation because
love
I
to
would
hear
love to
perspectives.
hear the perspective. What did your parents do? How did they present both sides? And if they didn't, what did that leave you left with? Because I truly believe that when you are left with nothing, like you just see your parents and you just see them together, these kids got to go out into the real world. They have to go out to school. You know, if you're taking them to high school, I cannot imagine, and I've seen it too, me growing up, you know, mixed children going into high school, and they are confused.
they absolutely.
I remember we talked about this in our last conversation. I did not know one mixed person that did not go through a season of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know one. I don't know one that I can look at and be like, man, that's how I want Asa to be.
There's a lot that you said that I want to unpack, but like I want to take the first bite.
Go ahead.
First.
I'm here.
It's like you said if we aren't teaching our kids, right? It's like almost like we have a whole generation of people who are not equipped to have this conversation or understand this conversation, yet the systems that are controlling society are still in place.
Yeah.
Subconscious bias is still in place. Let me challenge it just for a second. If the thought process of interethnic couples who are together who decide not to talk about it, if the thought process is that we just are loving through it, we're just choosing love, right? Mm-hmm. Love over everything. And they impart that into their children. Even if they don't understand the conversation, the subconscious bias, do you think at some point, if they just have a mentality of love conquers all and just saying, I just love and I don't think about it, do you think eventually we could heal as a society without ever truly addressing the deeper things? Do you think that there will be enough people if they show love without even understanding what's going on?
I don't think so. And I say that because I will say this. I feel that as you continue to get older, and now the world is telling you what happened, the world is now putting stuff in your mind versus your parents telling you, like, I'm going to talk to you about this, like some of these evil things that have happened. I feel like when the world decides that, now you're like, whoa, this is what happened. Now I have to love through this. And you keep getting hit and hit and hit with more of the evil things that are happening in the world. That can cause you to fall. Mm-hmm. Is your love strong enough is what I'm really saying. But that part of like, do I feel that your love is strong enough to withstand as the evil, as you hear more evil things that have happened in our cultures, as you hear from social media, from articles, you start to get exposed. That's dangerous to me.
And low key, I want to say this in the least controversial way possible, because this isn't about this person. What I'm about to say is not about this person. It's not about what they stand for. It's not about political affiliation or anything like that. But there was a certain level of reality that I think America got slapped in the face with when Trump became president, because he created a platform for people to feel comfortable with speaking their mind. And I think what was just astounding to us was the level at which people were speaking their mind across the country about racial issues so strongly, to the degree that they were.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, listen, I knew racism was still here. Clearly, I knew that the racial systems were still in place, biased against black people. But dang, people were coming out in droves saying some bold things across.
I would say
and I was
that,
like, it's heavy still.
I would say that in 2020.
2020 for sure. That
That was rough. And being honestly, like hearing some of what other cultures felt about us was very hard. Mm-hmm. But that's what I mean. Like, I would get nervous for our kids to go out into the world and get exposed of what has happened to our cultures and all that just on their own without us talking about it and giving a base level. Now, yes, it's going to happen. They're going to get exposed, but at least they have a base level of what they know. And that going out there just with no knowledge is scary.
And I mean, you look at Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X and how they approached the civil rights movement, very different approaches. But even like Dr. King and his perspective of showing love and kindness and not returning evil for evil, he was still knowledgeable in what was going on. He still knew the entire history, all of the details, and was still fighting just in a different way. So just saying like love conquers all, conceptually, yes, but ignorance doesn't conquer anything.
Ignorance does not conquer anything. And that's what I get concerned about. I want to make sure that we have a base level.
So going back to what you said, you were talking about Aza and mixed kids in general. Sorry. You were talking about mixed kids in general, and you don't know a single one who did not go through some sort of identity crisis. Right?
Yeah, I don't know. Now, other people may not. I just don't know.
So here's a question. This is a very hypothetical question. This is just opinion based, but if we had Aza in a bubble for her whole life, just flow with me.
I would never do that though.
Flow with me. I'm trying to understand something. If we kept Aza in a bubble and she did not experience the outside world society for 18 years, do you think that she would still go through an identity crisis at some point growing up? That she would be confused. Why does mom look dark? Why does dad look light? And why do I look like I'm in the middle?
Are you saying if we kept her in a bubble for 18 years and 18 years she goes out, would she be confused?
While she's in the bubble.
I don't think in the bubble she would be confused because she's in a bubble.
You think that the identity, so here's what I'm getting at. Do you think that the identity crisis that mixed kids go through is only because of social pressures and telling them who they are?
I think,
This is just opinion. This is not based on.
I think that is I think that's partial. I think that there's that. And I also think that okay, then maybe I take it back. I say that I think that she could still be confused. There is potential of her still being confused because, again, how our cultures collide will cause her to ask a lot of questions. And she can choose to understand or she can choose to be upset. She can choose to go one way, go the other. I think it could still be an issue. I think social is partial.
I agree. I think even if it was just in our home, she could still be like, Mommy, why do you look different than Daddy?
Yeah.
Why don't I look like you? Why don't I look like Daddy? Like that could still be confusing for a kid growing up. I could see how it would be confusing anyway. I think social pressure just becomes an amplifier of that confusion.
Yeah.
This is my personal opinion. I think when you have kids telling you, well, why do you look different than us? Or why don't you speak the same way? Or, you're not black. You don't act black or you don't act white. Why do you talk like that? Why do you live like this? Why your mommy and daddy have this and we don't? Like whatever they want to throw out there, both sides. Right?
And that's what I mean why colorism is also a part of this too, is because you could be black and people say all those things as well. And Aza's going to go into school where there's black people that feel that she's one way and then white people that feel she's a different way just because of who she is. This has nothing to do, to me, it has nothing to do with black and white. It's because it can also mainly be because of her skin tone. She can people can just look at her and make assumptions of how she's going to be, how she's going to act because of her skin tone.
How do you feel like colorism has shifted since you were in school?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't been around kids. And I do wonder what people think when it comes to
not necessarily kids only.
Oh, you think society?
In general. Because you experienced a lot of colorism when you were growing up.
Yeah.
So how has that experience shifted in the way that society handles, from your perspective, how society handles colorism?
I think that there's been a huge shift on how people view like dark-skinned women. I feel like when I was growing up, people thought dark-skinned women was ugly. Now Lupita is the most beautiful woman, has been rated the most beautiful woman, and she's gorgeous. I feel that there's just been a shift, and I think that as time goes on, it just teeters and totters, and it doesn't really give like all women are beautiful. It still doesn't.
Is that a media thing? Do you think that media just chooses who to make beautiful and who to not?
Absolutely.
And
I do.
society shifts with it?
Yes, I do. I think that back in the day, people don't realize how brainwashed we were of what beauty looked like, and how people saw black women in movies, how people saw white women in movies, who got the main roles as a black woman versus, who got the, woman in the house was a dark skinned woman. Like all of that was brainwashing us into thinking what was beauty. And it all came from slavery.
So now that the media and society has, I don't want to use the wrong term here, but for the lack of a better word, accepted dark-skinned women as beautiful or view them as beautiful now from a cultural perspective, do you think that lighter-skinned women are taking the brunt of that and getting demoted or in a sense? Like, I'm trying to choose my words, but getting...
I don't know I don't think it's demoted. I think that there's been more of a balance. I don't want to say that there's been a switch, but I think that there's more of like, it's not like there's a bunch of slave movies of black women are being like out here super beautiful and, being chosen, and the light-skinned women are the servants. So I do think that there's been more of a balance.
So what does colorism today look like?
That's what I'm honestly, I'm not sure. And I'm going to be very honest. I don't even watch TV to know. Like, I don't even watch TV. I can just tell you what I've seen in social media is definitely there's been more of a beauty. But I also think that, and this is another conversation, is that I believe that black women can sometimes be viewed as exotic and will have people wanting to be with them because they're quote unquote exotic. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it's a fetish-ish type of, vibe.
And that's been a whole thing recently of, different cultures being with somebody because of a fetish, or people see it's exotic because of what people see on TV or social media. I'll also have social media.
Just as much as you are unaware of TV and stuff like that, I'm unaware of hip hop and R&B and what's going on in the world, because honestly, I just don't keep up with it like that. I used to, but let me tell you, Lexi had to break this whole beef down for me in the first place. This Kendrick Drake thing, I was like, what's happening? What's up? I mean, TikTok helped me as well, but I'm looking at this, and honestly, when I heard Kendrick's lyrics about Drake's not being black, I was really struggling with it for a second. I'm like, are we talking about the fact that he is just trying to, take black culture to promote himself and make himself appeal to black culture? Or does he really have issues with him being mixed? And again, like it obviously doesn't surprise me that people would have issues with people being mixed, but just to the degree that society responded to that, I was like, oh man.
That's deep. It's deep. And even when it came to now, I want to say we don't use the N-word at all. Like, I don't use it. I never use it.
Clearly, I don't.
But there was a whole conversation that our friend Jess had, which was, and she was mixed. She was like, can I say the N-word? And there was a huge percentage that was like, no. And now, given I don't believe anybody should use the N-word, but it was the fact that they were saying no because she was half white and half black, and that's a heavy conversation.
If you were okay saying the N-word, because we have friends who say it.
Yeah, we have friends who say it.
If you were okay with it, would you be okay with Asa or Elijah using it?
I would never be okay with Asa and Elijah using it.
If they were more
okay,
grown,
okay.
Not like as kids, that'd be weird.
I don't know. If I was okay with it.
I wouldn't.
You would? I mean...
I think it's one of those things like, let's just err on the side of caution.
But that's where it gets confusing, because there's people that are mixed that y'all let use the N-word. And it was just, this is all very like confusing. I'm gonna be honest, I feel confused. I don't know what the right answer is. I just know that we're not doing it because I don't think it's a healthy word, in my opinion. But, and it's just no benefit in my house.
I was gonna say, like, I don't see any positive coming from it. And there's certain situations where I'm like, okay, zero sum, like good or bad, no big deal. But this is one of the situations that it's like, if Asa or Elijah were to use it when they get older, this is a potentially very inflammatory issue. What is the benefit of using it versus what is the risk of using it?
Yeah,
and the risk just outweighs.
But also, it's not that. It's just that Oh, this is so deep because I feel like, for instance, I have no problem with the girl that I know uses it, and it's not
Mhm.
that because she grew up black. Like she grew up black. That's the whole
What does
conversation.
that
That's the
mean?
whole issue. She grew up black
I'm
around
saying
black people. She's
around
not.
black people, or like, did her white parent, was there them? Were they not in the picture? Did
I
she,
think she just all. I think I can
or
just say
did she
like she
choose
just.
that she was black?
I think that she grew up black. Like I know a lot of people that just grew up black, but they were just they had a white dad and maybe or a white mom, and they weren't really around.
But I could grow up in the same neighborhood and still not be able to say it or use it.
Yes, but she is half black, but she grew up mainly black. Like, so I don't, it gets real confusing.
Hmm.
I'm confused. My head hurts. But I will just say for me and mine is that spiritually, I just don't use it. But I understand why other black people use it. I empathize with that. And so I'm not like out here checking nobody, but I do use the word Negro. I do when I'm mad, I do say Negro.
And again, I do not. Just to clarify for the people.
I do say Negro, but I will.
I say, you beautiful person.
Now, when I let Aiden and Elijah say Negro, I don't know. This is a lot. I need to talk. I would say we need to.
We need a list of rules.
I
do's
need a
and
rule.
don'ts.
Somebody tell us. This is
But-
deep. I'm gonna
but-
be honest. We're being transparent here.
But also, what we have talked about that I want to make also very clear is that we have said very strongly that not only will we teach them what they are, right? Biologically,
Yes.
they are 50% black, 50% white. That is who you are. And I also think that there are good things that come from each culture. So I want them to understand that who you are is not all of your history as well. Like
Yeah.
you can take the positive of both cultures, understanding the negative, but you can take the positive and build your culture from that. You can build your own culture from that and your
Yeah.
own identity and not be confused as to who you are. At the end of the day, our kingdom culture trumps all of this. So
Yeah.
that's one main thing. But I just think that when we teach them who they are, like I still believe at some level they may experience an identity crisis at some point.
And they may also choose. Unfortunately, we
How
have.
would you feel about that?
I'm not, in my mind, I'm not fully tripping about it. As long as I feel like when I say choose, I mean their personality may fit more on the whiter side.
I'm not as much thinking about the personality or like slang or like speech rhetoric or anything like that. I'm talking about if they say, honestly, guys, mom, dad, I'm kind of identifying as black.
I guess I would have to think about it. If they choose
Or white.
I think that we would have a conversation of what that means because I don't see and this is real. I would love for people to comment about this. I don't know if I see our kids saying like just forget white people and now if I okay, I'm thinking. Sorry guys. But
Process it.
I'm processing.
Let it marinate.
I'm processing. If my kids decide that the hate of white people and the things that have happened, like I just don't want to identify with that. I can empathize. This is hard. This is very hard to process. And if that's how he wants to process or she wants to process, then I can empathize with that. If it comes from a place of hurt and pain, that is, she has the genes of what has happened to us, you know? So does Elijah. And it has been hard for me. That stuff has been hard for me to process. How that happens and just processing that's hard. That's difficult. I think that I would let her process, but we would also have a lot of conversation regarding love, forgiveness, understanding. Where is this root coming from? We would have a lot of conversation, but I would let him or her process.
There was a comment that someone made on that video that we made years ago, and it was a white man who was married to a black woman, had mixed kids, and he just was like, I'm just the white guy in the house. He had this like very, submissive tone or like subservient tone of just like, I'm just here, I just exist, I don't really matter.
They don't really bother me.
And
you
it
know?
was very strange, and it honestly bothered me, because I have to be honest with myself. I would be hurt if
Yeah.
my kids chose
To just
to
completely deny your
to
side.
deny and dismiss this, what I come from, what made me who I am. That would be hard, because again, I don't hate my culture. I see the negative, very aware of it, but I don't hate my culture. I don't dismiss. I don't reject my culture. And that would be very tough to be like, Dad, it's not you, bud. Like I don't associate with you or your history or your side of the family or anything. I can't identify with anything that you are, who you are.
Yeah.
That would be hard. I would hurt for you if they chose to be white,
Yeah.
chose to identify as white. I would be hurt for you. Like, in fact, I think I'd be more upset.
But you would be more,
I would be
how
hurt if
dare
it was me.
you?
I'd be upset. Like, do you not know what you
I think, I think,
go to timeout. Think about it.
I think I would, I am like this with many things, and you know this. I trust that my kids will be educated enough that I can understand where they're coming from. And not to say that they're not, they're kids, they're going to learn and grow. But I also I feel like what I've learned from my Mother's Day, but what I've learned from my mothers is patience and time changes a lot of things and helps. And I want my kids to know that I want to empathize as long as you're educated and you understand what you're talking about. And it doesn't mean that you can be educated and understand and then you decide to change because you thought that was stupid. But I want you to make sure you have an educated conversation with me. Tell me how you're feeling, and not just from like, I want to read all this stuff. I want to understand, where is this coming from? Let's talk through it. I hope that I can be a guide and a counselor with that. Now, this is a side note, but what do you think we're doing right now to help our kids with that? Aza's 4. We should probably, we do talk about different colors, but I think we can do a little bit more to educate her now.
I fully agree. I feel like, I don't say that we've dropped the ball, but I think that sometimes as parents, as new parents, I'm like, at what age are we supposed to have what conversations in general? I'm still trying to understand, at what age is she supposed to learn how to ride a bike? Or, at what age is she supposed to learn how to read? Like, I'm just trying to make sure I have these like benchmarks in my mind.
There's so many things.
When do we start teaching them this, that? Like, we're starting to really, really dive into Bible stories now and making sure she remembers Bible stories and trying to impart verses and things like that. Like, we've been talking to her about God for years, but like, at what point is she really going to get it in her mind about these things? And now, so it's tough. And I feel like this is one of those conversations. I'm like, at what age do we start to really, really hit that?
Yeah.
And it probably is now, because she's retaining everything now.
She is. And now I will say that since she was born, we've had books on colors, on the color of people's skin. Lapita's book, Solery, I think that's a Solery. That is a great book. I love that book. And then there's another book that we talk about the different skin tones and different cultures of people. I've been reading that to her for years, like since she was born.
Yeah, and I think, even in her, like, her dolls, even the colors that her dolls are, like, she has some black dolls, mixed dolls, white dolls.
She does.
It's actually across the board. It's
Yeah.
the full spectrum.
We try to just give well-rounded versions of things, but I do think having an actual conversation. She said something, she was talking about your shirt, when she was like, I have a white shirt just like daddy. And I was like, was she talking about your skin tone?
I'm hoping.
I was like, oh.
I was wearing a white shirt that day.
I was like, okay.
Maybe she sees me in white tees. I don't know.
But I think that is a conversation that we can actually have, and she would understand it pretty well.
I hope so. I definitely think we're at that point we should be starting.
I would love for you guys to really tell us, like, how did you teach your kids? If you have mixed kids, how did you teach them about black and white? How did you educate? What books did you read? We have a few books that we have read, but we would love, this is a community, we would love to hear what books that you have, shown your kids. We'll share them as we get them and put them under the description.
Yeah. This whole topic is a lot of it's not that it's uncharted territory. It's just it's confusing territory.
It's confusing territory, and we are new parents, and we're learning as we go.
And we may have some strong opinions about things, but what we are is we are always open.
Yeah.
We're always open to hearing another perspective, another viewpoint, and learning and hearing, like you said, from our community of how we can go about this and think about it. So we appreciate y'all bearing with us to have this conversation.
Yes. Let us know in the comments what you think, and y'all be nice. Okay.
If
be
we can
nice
all just show
with
love
this.
to one another, you know, like
We're trying to understand too. And I think these are our thoughts. We would love to hear yours, and we're open to conversation. So thank you so much. Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to follow us at underscore the co-life underscore and the Let's Get Deep podcast. Love you guys. Have a good week.